Hello and welcome to MM Unpacked. I'm Kimberley Dondo, and in today's episode, I'm joined once again by Dan and Tom. Do you want to give a short little intro about yourselves?
Absolutely. My name's Tom Browne. I'm editor of Money Marketing.
And I am Dan Cooper, news editor at Money Marketing.
Okay, awesome. So we are currently virtually recording this because it is work from home month, which is a nice little perk that we do have. And in this quiet, quote unquote, month of August, we have probably covered quite a lot. But I thought we could start with Amanda's big picture, which was on financial scams. So Tom, do you want to give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we decided to run this in August because August, we have this idea that August is a nice quiet month, but August clearly didn't get the memo, and lots of things have still gone on. But nonetheless, this is a very timely piece because, I mean, it's an ongoing problem about unregulated advice. We've run pieces by finfluencers before. We've run stories about FCA taking action against unregulated promotions or, fantastical claims. So we thought it was certainly worth having a proper deep dive into particularly unregulated firms that push rather sort of like extravagant claims of returns if you invest with them, and also the way that they promote themselves. So there's one particular case study that Amanda looks at in this article, which promised between 5% and 14% daily returns on investment, which would be lovely if it was true. Yep. But very nice. But I think anyone with sort of, a reasonable amount of sort of financial knowledge would smell a rat there. But then again, these firms are very, very plausible looking. If you go onto their websites, they look very glossy. They have employee pictures and biographies. They have, registered addresses. If you look a bit closer, the companies are actually registered in slightly odd places, and probably they're sort of like prestige London addresses. If you went to them, it's probably a warehouse or something. So you've got to be careful. And then, of course, the way they promote themselves on social media with unregulated adverts, this is absolutely rife. And at the moment, certain social media sites, I won't say who, have dialed back a little bit on fact checking and have prioritized clicks over regulation. And as a result, it's a problem. It's a potential real danger spot for the vulnerable and the unwary. And the article really calls for two things. Really, it calls for closer cooperation with the FCA in the case of social media companies, but in terms of consumers, heightened awareness and a greater emphasis on financial literacy as a way of tackling this. But neither one of those things are long-term problems. There's Amanda points out that AI, which is often in the spotlight for things like this, could potentially be helpful to detect fraud. But as I'm sure you would agree, Kim, there are issues with AI too.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned before the AI deepfakes that I've seen on particularly YouTube adverts, another website that cares more about ad sales than what the actual ad might be. And that one has Martin Lewis, and he's a notable figure within finance, a trusted figure. And it is him, obviously videos used of him and altering things that he has said in order to promote these ridiculous scams with ridiculous returns that he wouldn't promote. But I think what they aim for with a lot of these scams isn't necessarily for it to be convincing to everyone, but to be convincing to that small demographic of people so that they can just milk them, which is very unfortunate and scary.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Dan.
Sorry, so I'm not to say that is a trouble, isn't it? It's like it only needs to work 1% of the time to be effective. You might not get everyone, but certainly 1% of the that group is still a lot of money to the scammers. So
yeah, and they're more
100%.
likely to be vulnerable clients.
Yeah, and the problem with with these deep fake videos, in the case of someone like Martin Lewis, who, as you say, is a very trusted figure, there's a huge amount of video footage of him out there talking about finance with a face direct to camera. And I would imagine if you are putting together a fake video, there's an awful lot of material that you can call upon. And that's a problem. And as you say, it's a dragnet effect. You don't have to convince everyone. If people, are not 100% sure about the details of these subjects, you could put together, I'd imagine, a very plausible video and capture enough people that you'd make a very good return. So it's very worrying. And it's not just things like that. I mean, Dan, we've had a conversation about sort of like ChatGPT and the fact that you can just put in sort of like a request for advice from ChatGPT, and it can give you not just sort of like the same money saving tips that we know, but it can end up, ChatGPT has in some cases recommended like particular investments to pursue, all in a completely unregulated way.
Yeah, it's frightening really, because as you said, we focus on the pinfluencers and we focus on in Amanda's cover on unregulated firms, but there's a kind of whole new argument with LLMs and ChatGPT, for example, giving out this unregulated advice daily to millions and hundreds of thousands, millions of people, which is quite frightening. Really. I know we're going off topic a bit because Amanda's cover talks about the unregulated firms, but I think I saw a press release today. It said, I don't know how they quantified this and where the research came from, but it said that ChatGPT gave out kind of wrong financial advice 35% of the time.
Oh yeah.
Which I imagine it could even be higher than that. But it's quite a frightening thought, really, because let's say for all the good that AI has done, and we always talk about the pros and cons of AI, for all the good it's done, it might be used to help identify scams, but it can also be used to generate scams. I'm not sure the right word. I'm still in holiday mode. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
No, but it is. Yeah.
No, go Tom.
No, you go, Kim. Sorry.
I was going to keep going a little off topic, I guess, because I saw something about it's now termed AI psychosis, and how ChatGPT, the company OpenAI, they had to roll out new safety guards because people were starting to develop relationships with ChatGPT, and also they were using it as a therapist, which is all very concerning. And this was genuinely leading some people into mental health crises. And to that, I assume at some point, if it is giving wrong advice 35% of the time in terms of financial advice, I wonder if they will also in turn at some point roll back on its ability to comment on finances at all. Because right now they are kind of they've made it so people can't have those like deeper conversations that they've been having, or validating conversations that people have been having.
No, as Tom said earlier, it's not just like targeted support. It's not just giving a general recommendation like, you might want to put your £20,000 in an ISA. It's actually recommending specific funds and specific investments. I was at the LANCAP Advice Gap launch report a month or two ago, and one of the LANCAP team, sort of as we were chatting, kind of put a hypothetical situation into ChatGPT, like, I've got 30 grand to invest, what do you think I should do? And it was actually recommending particular funds.
Yeah, I mean that's
advice. That's not guidance. That's advice.
Yeah, and it is worrying things like that. But I have to, I mean, the number of conversations we have about AI in the course of our work, I'm probably suffering from AI psychosis myself. But I think to go back to Amanda's piece, it's not that the FCA are unaware or blind to all of this thing. We ran a news story, I think it was earlier this year, that they'd pulled or amended something like 20,000 promotions, and that's a lot of spade work that has gone into that to do that. But it is a case of sort of a whack-a-mole, the sort of like you shut down something over here and something pops up over here. These scammers are very, very fleet of foot. And in a digital age, it's always the case that the people with with the digital know-how always have that slight edge on the regulators. Many of these practices were evolved in a more analog age. So, yeah, in short, it's a worry, and there are no easy answers to it.
Yeah. You saying that about the whack-a-mole, and it just made me think how does the FCA, as the regulator, it feels like, people always critique them for always being late in terms of establishing certain things. So I wonder how they ever catch up, if it's even possible for them to catch up, unless they have those. I'm thinking of that Tom Cruise movie where they had the cognizant beings that were able
Minority
to
Report.
Yeah. If it's Minority Report style, and they're able to foresee what's to come.
I'd love it if the future of the FCA were a load of people floating in a pool trying to predict the future, but I think we're a bit off that.
Yeah,
I think
a little bit, yeah.
It's the problem with regulation in every given industry, isn't it? If the FCA were to come up with some very, very, very comprehensive, overarching sort of way of really, really, really clamping down all of this thing, everyone would be screaming about how you're drowning us all in regulation and red tape. So it's finding the balance as much as possible to allow the industry to sort of like thrive and be commercially viable, and on the other hand, protecting the vulnerable. And it's a bit of a merry dance. But at the moment, it feels like we're in a moment where the balance is too far beyond people who could who push all of this unregulated advice, and we're only at the start of really the AI journey, and the potential implications of it are exciting on the one hand, but worrying on the other.
And keeping with the FCA and what's on their regulatory agenda, they've also made it clear that they are focusing on culture within firms. So from a regulatory perspective, what constitutes as a toxic workplace culture? I know that we recently had an article come out about that, so I don't know if you wanted to kind of delve into that a bit, Tom.
Yeah, no, sure. I don't know why you looked at me when you suddenly mentioned the word toxic culture.
I know that you looked over this particular. I'm not trying to say anything. This is not the way that I would call you out if you were toxic.
That's
or maybe you would be.
No, this was a piece by Laura Perkis, which is one of our freelance writers, and like everything she writes, it's a very interesting take on what is again another quite topical issue, because in particular sort of like bullying and harassment rules. The announcement is the FCA are extending these specifically to advice firms from September this year. There will be classed as misconduct under the FCA's conduct rules across all regulated advice firms, including advisors. So the FCA's rationale is that the change will sort of remove uncertainty and bring sort of like consistency. These rules already apply in banks, but not advice firms. And I think the question that Laura is asking is, are financial advice firms ready for this? A lot of them lack HR functions, formal processes, oversight. I'm talking specifically about small firms here. And that leaves them sort of vulnerable to sort of like non-compliance. And, there's also the issue of kind of like, separation of powers, if you will. I mean, in the same that someone who is accused of bullying or inappropriate behaviour in these firms may also be in charge of compliance or pay or references. Is there enough bifurcation and separation? Is there enough of a procedure? There are a couple of people that talked off the record to Laura about experiences of bullying that they've had, of harassment, of withheld pay in one case, and what the potential solution to that might be. Small firms will probably need to outsource these kinds of HR and compliance functions, but then that's extra cost, which they're going to have to find a way of coping with, because they will risk regulatory action otherwise. So, and then I suppose the general sort of point is, what is the culture like in advice firms? We've talked in the past that these are historically quite blokey environments, you would say. There's still a sort of a gender imbalance. Our former colleague Lois Valley wrote a piece a while ago about sort of like, some of the sort of behaviour she'd witnessed, or firsthand or anecdotally. So it's whether, I suppose, the FCA are reacting to what they perceive as a real problem within these firms, or whether they're just trying to sort of make regulation more consistent. But I thought it was an interesting piece.
Yeah. And Dan, what would you do to sort this out?
I do to sort out.
Yeah.
Now you're putting on the spot.
From your perspective, I think I'm wondering what do you think would be the right steps to address toxic workplace culture in a small advice firm?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because as Tom says, you want to make it an inclusive environment for people to come into. There was a report, and again, I forget now who it was, but not so long ago, a report that most women who are in financial advice now would recommend it as a career, but a high percentage wouldn't actually enter the profession in the first place because of the perceived, as Tom said, it's a bit of a kind of middle class white blokey environment, and I think anything that makes financial advice kind of more inclusive and encourages more people to come in and sorts out any existing issues, like Tom said, whether that's perceived or real. I think that's it's a good thing.
It would be interesting just to say, to pick up on that point about sort of like women like recommending advice as a career. I wonder how much that's due to the fact that we know that sort of like advice, it's quite a sort of there are lots of different sort of types of opportunities within advice, and it's quite adaptable and it's quite flexible in terms of remote working, in terms of what region you work in terms of demand, and this, that, and the other. And women have certainly said that they've been better able to sort of tailor it to their lifestyle and their requirements. Yeah. So I wonder if it's down to that more than culture. And I would wonder if they were asked specific questions on workplace culture within advice, whether the picture might be slightly different. I don't know, but
But sometimes it's one of those things where, unfortunately, I think you end up having just to go and find the right firm for yourself. Yeah. Or it might promote you to think to start your own business. I think I've spoken to some advisors who, when they did set up their own firms, it was because they didn't particularly like the firms where they started out and how things were done there. So then they thought, I'm going to do a better job. And you can only hope that each time someone has that push to keep doing that it makes for better and better small firms who have a better idea of how to manage and encourage new talent and be more inclusive, because they've experienced environments that were not desirable.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think being within a toxic environment is a terrible thing to go through, but it's one hell of a life lesson if you do manage to get through the other side of it. I remember in my case, I obviously bring it all back to me. Hello, wasn't it? Yeah. I remember I had no names. I guess. But I remember having a really, really terrible sort of line manager. Not bullying, just really bad at sort of managing people. And when I got into my first management position, I thought, well, I'm pleased I've gone through that experience, because I know what it takes to be a good manager now. It's do the complete opposite of everything that person did.
Yeah.
And then and hey presto, you get to a sort of like a decent place. But I mean, no one should have to go through it in the first place, really.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been very fortunate really throughout my career, but yeah, a lot of friends who've been in those kind of environments, and the effects on your mental health, and then not just your mental health but your confidence as well, because going forward you just think, oh, is every job going to be the same? Am I going to do that again? And it does knock your confidence as a person. So I've known a few people who have gone through it, and it's not nice, so it clearly needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Definitely. But pivoting from that, we have also been focusing on apprenticeships as a way to get into financial advice, especially for younger people. And since, A-level results came out and GCSE results, but you can't leave school at 16 anymore, right? So
can you not?
No, I don't think so. I don't. This is where I show my age, because back in my day, you could.
You can technically, can't you? I think, but yeah, you obviously college, and some of them are.
Yeah. So for those A-level students who are not necessarily looking to go to university because they don't want to incur the massive debt, because again, back in my day, it wasn't that much, but now it definitely is. So apprenticeships are a big positive for a lot of people. And I know that Amanda did a piece on, how apprenticeships can be used to get more people within financial advice.
Yeah, Amanda does a regular column for us called Starting Out, which it looks at sort of young people in the round potentially wanting to go into financial advice. And it's always linked to an initiative that Money Marketing is sort of tangentially involved in, which is Future Financial Advisor, which is like a sort of website and hub which gives, all kinds of information for people who want to break into the profession. But yeah, I mean, she's looked at apprenticeships, but she's also kind of like looked at the whole issue of like helping school leavers break into sort of financial advice. I mean, the world has changed so much since I did my A-levels and since I applied to university. I mean, I'm showing my age now, but it was prior to tuition fees. So really, I know. So really, I mean, it was accommodation and living costs and things like that that was the only real burden. The educational part of it was free. And I don't know what decision I would have made if that hadn't been the case. You look at things like degree apprenticeships where, you are working and at the same time as you're earning, and that gives you a head start. Depending on who's offering the degree apprenticeship, it gives you a toe in the door in a particular firm. It allows you to learn on the job. You earn money. Your learning is subsidised to an extent, and you're much more likely at the end of it to come out with a job and not mountains of debt. And when you compare that to an awful lot of, I mean, we argue back and forth about the worth of certain degrees. I mean, my attitude is always that there's no such thing as wasted knowledge, and I don't particularly like the whole idea that, well, the only purpose of learning anything is in order to get a job. But put that to one side for a second. There's no doubt that, it's put the rising tuition fee issue has put the spotlight on, BAs in skateboarding or golf or Klingon or something like, this is the kind of like the tabloid sort of like caricature of it. But it is a serious question. It's like, what degrees are actually worth the money and the investment, and what aren't? And at a time when the economy is not doing well, there's a cost of living crisis, there's a lot of concern around employment, more and more graduates are having to think about that, or will be even people who have taken their A-levels, much more so than people did where I think people kind of thought, well, I'll go to the university and I'll kind of learn a bit about life and learn about living independently, and then maybe I'll have a think about it. An awful lot of people who weren't doing law or accountancy or medicine, or that was their kind of attitude.
Yeah.
I was exactly the same boat, because despite my greying hair, I wasn't before tuition fees, but obviously I wanted to do journalism. I knew I wanted to write, and I had a conversation, during careers advice and things, and the general consensus was I wanted to go into print journalism, and it's an NCTJ, which is sort of the qualification that you generally need to become a print journalist. And I remember this guy saying to me, you can go to university, you can do a 3-year degree in journalism, and then you will probably still have to come out of that and take your NCTJ.
Yeah.
That's precisely what I did.
Yeah, and I didn't have the benefit of no tuition fee, so I was thinking, right, okay, well, I can get myself in, I don't know, 20, 30 grand worth of debt, still have to do the NCTJ, which I think is about 5 or 6 grand. I would have loved to have the uni experience, but I kind of took the decision then that is it worth it? For that amount of debt, is it worth me going to uni for 3 years and then still not getting the qualification that I need?
Yeah.
So it wasn't an apprenticeship as such that I did, but I kind of knew that university wouldn't get me necessarily to the place that I wanted to be. So
yeah, and I think now more than ever, I think a lot of younger people are more likely to not know what they want to do. So before, when you didn't know what you wanted to do, going to uni was almost like a nice little gap, and that would give you a bit of breathing room, because I think the majority of the people that I know around the same age as me are not using what they did for their undergrad in their current careers. It was just the experience, like Tom said, everything they learned from there helped them in some form to get to where they are now, me included. But I think now that the pricing of tuition is so high, people are having to look at other options. And I think apprenticeships are a better option because you are also making money as opposed to losing money by choosing to do this. And potentially going into a career that you had no idea about, which financial advice is one of those for a lot of young people.
100%. I would also say that Amanda has a lot of advice for kind of like school leavers, people who are sort of like exploring their first tentative steps about trying to get on the ladder in the jobs market, which is never fun and can be difficult. And it's sort of like that whole thing about sort of like not hearing back from applications, dealing with sort of rejection, what are the good tips for CVs, for cover letters, for LinkedIn profiles. It's all good quality stuff, because it's I think it can be a shock when you make that first move from sort of like higher education or just school into the jobs market. It's almost like that's the first real transition from sort of like teenage or child life into the adult world, and I certainly found it quite daunting initially. And I realized at that point I still had an awful lot to learn. Something that 3 years at uni certainly didn't do.
No. It's a lifetime of work, I think.
Yeah.
But finally, I think we should definitely touch on the inheritance tax changes on pensions that are potentially or pretty much confirmed to be happening as of April 2027. So the industry has reacted. And what has those reactions been?
Not very well, as you can imagine.
We're not doing parades in the streets?
No.
Okay.
No pitchforks either. It's not quite that extreme. But
okay.
Obviously, IHT has kind of been it hasn't really gone away. The IHT on pensions issue debate since it was first announced by the Chancellor in the budget. We obviously had all of the pre-budget speculation, which led to lots of panic and
Mm-hmm.
phone calls to advisors, and then the news was confirmed, and then confirmed again recently, and it was a kind of a very slim hope, I think, by many in the sector that Labour have had a couple of U-turns now, that this might be another U-turn, and should sort of think twice about introducing IHT on pensions from April 2027, but no joy. So this kind of debate is still very much on the surface, and we've had a lot of contributors writing about it. We've had a lot of reaction, and it's just then on top of that, there's the news last month, which I wanted to bring up, which was the gifting.
Yes.
And the cap on lifetime gifting that Rachel Reeves is also reportedly considering, where at the moment you can up to $3,000 a year tax free to your dependents or grandchildren, and
which isn't even that much.
She's also targeting. No, it's not a huge amount, but she's also seems to be targeting that as well. Tom and I were having a chat earlier and said, obviously they made a pledge in their manifesto not to tax working people, not to go after national insurance, not to go after income tax. So that kind of really restricts what they can do to kind of plug this black hole in terms of the finances. So as we know, CGT, IHT, and IHT seems to be one that they're really going for at the moment. As a result, advisors have really had to kind of rethink their clients' entire retirement strategies, and you keep hearing about more people being sort of sent into annuities, and an increase in people going to trusts and bonds and various other different tax wrappers just to try and get around it.
As always is the case, well-advised people will be okay. They'll find ways kind of around this and minimise the tax take. But I mean, the government is just in a terrible bind, really. I mean, it has a absolutely rotten economic sort of situation to deal with. As a result, partly from COVID. I mean, depending on what your political prejudices, you can argue what the main causes are. It could be COVID, Brexit, the war in Ukraine, Trump's tariffs.
All three. All of the above. Just
Liz
packing
Truss,
on top of each other.
Tory mismanagement. There's all but whatever it is, I think, things both in government control or out of government control has left us in a very, very awkward situation. And on top of that, this Labour government pledged not to raise taxes on working people, which they defined as income tax, VAT, and national insurance. And that's something like 70% of the tax take. So if you don't target those things, essentially what you're doing is you're picking at the margins to try and raise the money that you need to pick. And the problem with that is targeting lots of different things is you'll cause lots of separate pieces of outrage and criticism. And it just feels to me like this government is being kind of pecked to death. And I could feel sorry for them on that basis, but I think that they're not handling it that well in terms of how they're communicating the changes, how they're following through with them. It seems to me that they're copping the maximum amount of pain and sort of not gaining the kind of money that they're going to. I think they would have to make, it may still have to happen at some point in the future that they'll have to make a big U-turn on either income tax or VAT. But I mean, the minute they do that, they'll lose a huge amount of support. So it's partly economic and it's partly political. I think we published a number of pieces reacting to these IHT proposals. An absolutely blisteringly angry piece from Andy Bell of AJ Bell. An equally angry one this week from Ros Altman, the former pensions minister. A slightly more measured one, or measured-ish ones, from Stephen Levine from Quilter and Andrew Tully from Nucleus. But none of them are massively positive. They're all basically saying, look, you need to rethink this because, you want to encourage saving and investment. On the one hand, you want economic growth. On the other hand, you want to sort of penalise people sort of like in a way that is going to militate against those goals. But as always, all eyes on next month's or October's budget. How Rachel Reeves ends up squaring all of these circles. Very interesting to see what she does on gifting and other potential wealth taxes as well. Although, that seems to change with the wind in terms of speculation on wealth taxes. She's ruling them in, she's ruling them out, or maybe this one over here might be a possibility. We will have to see.
Yeah. Well, it seems as if, though, this budget might be more active for us. I think there might be a lot more to report on.
I think it'll be a busy one again, because we the last autumn budget was crazy, and then the spring statement was kind of a little bit of a damp squib in some respects, but that's probably a relief after the previous one. But I think it's going to be a busy one. So
I'm going to be on paternity leave for this budget. I've timed that really, really well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
for
you
that.
did.
I'm going to sit at home with some popcorn while
just watch it all coming.
I was also thinking about our sister magazine, Mortgage Strategy. I think for the last couple of years, it's always been the mortgage industry is being forgotten once again by the Chancellor. But so far, I think we've had a lot of rumors on different changes that she is potentially going to propose. So on their side, it seems like, again, like a different wealth tax in terms of what she's going to do with stamp duty and this mansion tax, which when I looked into it, I don't know how you can determine a mansion tax, because it's for properties worth £500,000, and there's quite a lot of properties in my area that are £500,000, and they are not mansions.
I think that applies to just about a one-bedroom flat in London, doesn't it?
I was going to say, the average house price now is about something like 380, isn't it, or 400? So I mean, that's almost just a
tax on the middle class, which I think has been the critique, that like what is being perceived as her taxing the wealthy isn't the wealthy, it's just the middle class, is if there even is a middle class anymore.
Well, it's the same debate we always have about income tax thresholds and fiscal drag and things like that. But on the one hand, it's to carry on freezing these, or not changing stamp duty thresholds as well. On the one hand, it is unfair because people who aren't really that rich get dragged into it. On the other hand, it raises an awful lot of revenue for the Exchequer, which they really can't do without at the moment. So it's again, who'd be a politician, eh?
Not me.
It's the same with IHT as well, though, isn't it? IHT is a similar case. It's not, it's always considered a tax for the wealthy, but more and more now have been caught in the net, and it's not really a tax for the wealthy anymore. So.
No. But we will see.
We will see.
We will see. But thank you so much, Dan and Tom, for joining me for this episode of MM Unpacked. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode, which will be back in the studio. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We're on. Bye.